Millionaire CEO hires single mother to care for his rebellious twin children. He's shocked by what he sees on the cameras. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Sarah Mitchell clutched her threadbare coat tighter as the bitter December wind whipped through the busy downtown street. Beside her, 10-year-old Max walked silently, his small fingers gripping his prized Nintendo Switch, the last gift from his father before the accident 3 years ago. "Are you sure about this, honey?" Sarah asked, her voice catching slightly. Max nodded bravely, though his knuckles had turned white from holding the gaming console so tightly. "It's okay, Mom. We need the money for rent." Sarah's heart cracked. A little more. No child should have to part with their treasures to keep a roof over their head, but here they were. After losing her teaching assistant position last month and spending their meager savings on medicine when Max caught pneumonia, they were down to their last few dollars. They positioned themselves near the entrance of Westfield Mall, where affluent shoppers streamed in and out with designer bags and carefree expressions. Sarah swallowed her pride. "Excuse me, sir," she called to a well-dressed businessman. "Would you be interested in buying a barely used Nintendo Switch? It's in perfect condition." The man barely glanced at them before hurrying past. Sarah tried again with a woman juggling shopping bags. "Ma'am, would you—" "I don't carry cash," the woman interrupted, not breaking her stride. After an hour of rejections, Sarah felt Max's small hand slip into hers. "It's okay, Mom. Maybe we can try again tomorrow." That's when she noticed him, a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit standing a few feet away, observing them with an unreadable expression. His presence was commanding, his steel-gray eyes intense as they moved from Sarah's face to Max's gaming console. "How much?" he asked suddenly, his deep voice cutting through the noise of the crowded street. Sarah straightened her shoulders. $300. It was optimistic, but she needed every penny. The man approached them slowly, his gaze lingering on Max's tight grip on the Nintendo. "And why are you selling it?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Most potential buyers asked about battery life or included games, not their reasons. "That's personal," she replied firmly. To her surprise, the man's expression softened slightly. "Of course." He reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. "Will $500 be sufficient?" Max gasped, and Sarah felt momentarily dizzy. That's too much." "I disagree," the man said simply, extending the money toward her. With trembling fingers, Sarah accepted the bills. Max reluctantly held out the Nintendo, his eyes wet with unshed tears. The man took the console carefully, as if understanding its significance. "Thank you," he said, his eyes meeting Sarah's with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I'm Jackson Hayes," he added unexpectedly, reaching into his suit pocket and extracting a business card. "If you're looking for work, Mrs. Mitchell." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied automatically. "And this is my son, Max." Jackson nodded, his expression contemplative. "Sarah Mitchell, I may have a proposition for you. Call that number tomorrow morning." Before Sarah could respond, Jackson Hayes had slipped the Nintendo into his pocket and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of holiday shoppers. Max looked up at his mother, confusion written across his young face. "Mom, who was that man?" Sarah stared at the business card in her hand. The embossed letters read, "Jackson Hayes, CEO, Hayes Innovations." "I don't know, sweetheart," she whispered, her mind racing with possibilities and uncertainties. "But I think our luck might be changing." Jackson Hayes stepped into his sprawling mansion, the Nintendo Switch still in his pocket, weighing strangely heavy for such a small device. The grand foyer echoed with the sounds of shouting and running feet. Familiar chaos that made his shoulders tense instantly. "Mr. Hayes!" A frazzled woman in her 50s burst into the entryway, her face flushed. "I can't do this anymore. Your sons are—" A crash from upstairs punctuated her sentence. "That's the third vase this week." Jackson sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Mrs. Winters, please. No, I've had enough. She thrust her apron at him. 7 nannies in 5 months. These boys need more than I can give them. With that, she stormed out, the heavy door slamming behind her. Dad's home. A voice called from above, not sounding particularly welcoming. Jackson looked up to see identical faces peering down from the landing, Ethan and Noah, his 10-year-old twin sons. Their expressions were a mixture of defiance and wariness. What happened to Mrs. Winters, he asked, already knowing the answer. Ethan, the more outspoken twin, shrugged. She said we were ungovernable and insufferable, Noah added quietly, his eyes downcast. Jackson climbed the stairs slowly, studying his sons. They had their mother's features, Emma's chestnut hair and delicate nose, but their eyes were all his. Since Victoria had walked out 2 years ago, those eyes had grown increasingly guarded. Boys, we've talked about this. He kept his voice, level, professional, like addressing difficult board members. You can't keep driving away everyone who tries to help us. Why not? Ethan challenged. They all leave anyway. The raw hurt in his son's voice made Jackson flinch. Before he could respond, his phone rang, his assistant with an urgent call from Tokyo. As always, work provided a convenient escape. We'll discuss this later, he said, retreating to his office. Hours later, Jackson found himself staring at the Nintendo Switch on his desk. He thought of Max's reluctance to part with it, the quiet dignity in Sarah Mitchell's eyes despite their obvious poverty. Something about her approach, warm but firm, vulnerable yet strong, stayed with him. His own sons hadn't had a mother's love since birth. Emma had died, bringing them into the world. Victoria, his second wife, had been more interested in his bank account than motherhood. Now his boys were spiraling and he was failing them. On impulse, Jackson picked up his phone and called his assistant. Rebecca, I need you to run a background check on someone. By morning, he knew everything about Sarah Mitchell, former elementary school teacher, widowed when her husband died in a construction accident, struggling financially but with an impeccable reputation at every job she'd held. Jackson made his decision. He needed someone who wouldn't give up on his sons, someone who understood loss and resilience. The Nintendo Switch sat on his desk like a sign. Sometimes the most valuable things came from unexpected places. He picked up the phone to make an offer that would change everything. Sarah stood at the imposing iron gates of the Hayes estate, Max fidgeting nervously beside her. The security guard checked her ID before allowing them through with a curt nod. Mom, this place is huge, Max whispered, eyes wide as they approached the mansion. It's like in those movies where the bad guy lives. Sarah squeezed his hand. Hush. Mr. Hayes is offering us a good opportunity. Though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. The job offer had seemed too good to be true. Live-in housekeeper and nanny for his twin sons, with a salary that would solve all their financial problems. The massive front door swung open before they could knock. Jackson Hayes stood there, immaculate in casual designer clothes that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. Ms. Mitchell. Max. Welcome. His tone was cordial but reserved. Please come in. The interior was even more overwhelming. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, priceless artwork. Sarah felt instantly out of place in her worn jeans and secondhand coat. Your sons? She asked, noticing the house's silence. Jackson's expression tightened. Upstairs, plotting no doubt. He gestured for them to follow him to his study. Before you meet them, I should explain something. Once seated, Jackson's professional facade faltered slightly. Ethan and Noah have had difficulties since their stepmother left 2 years ago. They've driven away 7 housekeepers in 5 months. Sarah raised an eyebrow. What exactly did these difficulties involve? Pranks, mostly. Defiance, refusal to follow rules. Jackson paused. Their mother died during childbirth. Victoria, my second wife, was the only mother figure they knew, and she abandoned them without even saying goodbye. Sarah's heart ached at the thought. I see. I've arranged a guest house for you and Max while you decide if this arrangement will work, Jackson continued. Unless you're already reconsidering. There was a strange vulnerability beneath his businesslike tone, as if he expected rejection. I'd like to meet them first, Sarah replied firmly. Upstairs, two identical boys sat cross-legged on a bedroom floor, hunched over what looked suspiciously like blueprints. They glanced up with identical scowls when Jackson cleared his throat. Boys, this is Ms. Mitchell and her son Max. Ms. Mitchell will be looking after you starting today. For how long? One twin challenged. Mrs. Winters lasted 4 days. That's Ethan, Jackson supplied, and this is Noah. Noah, slightly thinner and more withdrawn than his brother, barely made eye contact. It's nice to meet you both, Sarah said warmly. I hope we'll get along well. The twins exchanged a look that clearly communicated their doubt. As Jackson showed them to the guest house, Sarah spotted the first trap, a nearly invisible wire stretched across the hallway at ankle height. She stepped over it casually, guiding Max to do the same without drawing attention to it. Inside the guest house, Max turned to her. Mom, those boys look mean. They're hurting, Sarah corrected gently. There's a difference. That night, as Sarah unpacked their few belongings, she heard a crash and splash from the bathroom. She rushed in to find a bucket had been rigged over the door, soaking the floor with soapy water. Rather than anger, she felt determination rising. These boys needed someone who wouldn't give up on them. And if there was one thing Sarah Mitchell knew how to do, it was persevere through adversity. From his security monitor, Jackson watched with fascination as Sarah calmly mopped up the mess, her expression not of frustration, but compassion. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope. The morning dawned with suspicious quiet. Sarah moved cautiously through the main house, expecting another prank, but found only emptiness. The twins apparently still asleep. Jackson already gone to work with only a brief note about meetings until evening. She decided to prepare breakfast anyway, hoping food might be a peace offering. As she worked in the gleaming kitchen, far more sophisticated than any she'd used before, she heard shuffling footsteps. Max appeared, bleary-eyed. Mom, the beds here are so soft I almost got lost in mine. Sarah smiled, ruffling his hair. Well, don't get too used to... A loud crash from upstairs interrupted her. She rushed toward the sound, Max following close behind. They found Ethan standing over a shattered picture frame in the hallway, his expression carefully neutral. It was an accident, he said flatly, though everything in his posture suggested otherwise. Sarah knelt to examine the damage. Inside the frame was a photograph of a beautiful woman holding infant twins. Is this your mother? She asked gently. Ethan's practiced indifference faltered. Our real mother. Not Victoria. Sarah carefully removed the photo from the broken glass. She was beautiful. You have her smile? Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, surprise perhaps at her calm reaction. He'd clearly expected anger or frustration. Breakfast is almost ready, she continued, handing him the undamaged photo. Would you and Noah like blueberry pancakes? Ethan hesitated, then nodded slightly before retreating to get his brother. In his downtown office, Jackson found himself distracted, checking the security feed on his tablet more often than his financial reports. He watched Sarah navigate each, challenge the twins threw at her, syrup in her shoes, salt in the sugar bowl, a water balloon over the laundry room door. Yet instead of shouting or threatening to quit, she responded with unwavering patience. After the water balloon, she'd actually laughed, then somehow turned it into a lesson about water displacement as she cleaned up, engaging both boys in the science behind their own prank. Jackson's assistant knocked, startling him. Sir, the Tokyo. Investors are waiting in the conference room. Right, he muttered, reluctantly closing the security feed. That evening he returned home to find an unusual sight. All three boys sitting at the kitchen table working on what appeared to be model airplanes while Sarah prepared dinner. Mr. Hayes, she acknowledged with a small smile. We didn't expect you back so early. The twins looked up, their expressions guarded as always in his presence. Jackson realized with a pang how rarely he saw them engaged in any activity that wasn't destructive. What's all this? He asked, gesturing to the models. Max is teaching us how to build balsa wood planes, Noah said quietly. His dad taught him before, The sentence hung unfinished, heavy with shared understanding of loss. Jackson noticed something else. Placed carefully on a shelf was a leather-bound album he hadn't seen in years. It contained the only photos of Emma with the twins before her death. "I hope you don't mind," Sarah said, following his gaze. "The boys showed it to me. I thought it deserved a special place." Later, after the children were in bed, Jackson found Sarah in the kitchen, reviewing schoolwork the twins had reluctantly completed. "How did you do it?" he asked abruptly. Sarah looked up, puzzled. "Do what?" "Survive a single day without quitting. They're usually much worse with new people." Sarah considered her answer carefully. "They're testing boundaries, seeing if I'll abandon them too. They don't need discipline as much as they need consistency." Jackson stared at her, this ordinary woman with extraordinary insight. "They've never mentioned Emma to anyone before today."
"Children need to remember," Sarah said softly, "even when it hurts." For the first time in years, Jackson wondered if perhaps he needed the same. 2 weeks into their new arrangement, Sarah found herself navigating the complex dynamics of the
Hayes household with growing confidence. The twins' pranks had decreased in frequency, though not disappeared entirely. Today, she was determined to break through Noah's reserved exterior. Noah, the quieter twin, was often overshadowed by Ethan's bold defiance. While Ethan wore his anger openly, Noah buried his feelings deep, observing everything with watchful, wounded eyes. Sarah found him alone in the music room, staring at the grand piano no one ever played. "Do you know how?" she asked, startling him. Noah shrugged. "Victoria started teaching us, but then..." His voice trailed off. Sarah sat on the bench, patting the space beside her. After a moment's hesitation, Noah joined her. "My husband used to play," she offered, touching the keys lightly. "Nothing fancy, just enough to accompany himself singing silly songs to Max." Noah's fingers hovered over the keys. "I barely remember the lessons." "That's okay. Music isn't about perfection." Sarah played a simple melody with one hand. "It's about expressing what words can't say." Noah watched her hands, then tentatively pressed a key. "Victoria promised she'd always be there for us." His voice hardened. She lied. Sarah's heart ached at the bitterness in his young voice. "Noah, she said we were her special boys, but then she just left." Suddenly, Noah slammed both hands on the keys, producing a jarring sound that matched his outburst. "She didn't even say goodbye. And Mom, our real mom, she left too. She died having us." The raw pain in his voice hung in the room. Sarah remained still, sensing this was a dam breaking after years of silence. "Everyone leaves," Noah whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Everyone." Sarah gently placed her hand over his. "I lost Max's father in a construction accident. One day he kissed us goodbye, and by afternoon he was gone forever." Noah looked up, surprised by her candor. "For months I was angry at the world," Sarah continued. "Sometimes I still am. But Noah, your mother didn't choose to leave you. She gave her life bringing you into this world. That's the greatest love there is." In the hallway, just out of sight, Jackson stood frozen, Sarah's words piercing through the armor he'd built around his grief. He'd come home early again, drawn by an inexplicable need to see how his household was functioning. Instead, he found himself transported back to the worst day of his life, the day he gained 2 sons and lost the love of his life. He'd never told the boys much about Emma, finding the topic too painful. Had that been another failure on his part? Does it ever stop hurting? Noah's question pulled Jackson back to the present. "It changes," Sarah answered thoughtfully. "The pain becomes part of you, but so does the love. Your mother will always be with you, Noah, just in a different way than you'd hoped." Jackson retreated silently, unnoticed by either of them, his chest tight with emotions he'd suppressed for years. That night, after the children were asleep, Jackson found Sarah in the kitchen preparing lunches for the next day. "You work late," he observed, startling her. "Oh, Mr. Hayes, I didn't hear you come in." "Jackson," he corrected, then hesitated before continuing. "I overheard you with Noah today, about his mother." Sarah's expression grew cautious. "I hope I didn't overstep." "No," he said quickly. "Actually, I wanted to thank you. I haven't been very good at helping them with that part of their history." Their eyes met across the kitchen island, and for the first time, Jackson allowed himself to truly see Sarah Mitchell, not just as an employee, but as a woman whose strength had been forged in the same fires that had nearly consumed him. "Emma would have liked you," he said quietly, surprising himself with the admission. Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth that reached her eyes. "I wish I could have met her." Something shifted between them in that moment. A tentative bridge across carefully, guarded boundaries. Neither knew yet where it might lead, but for Jackson Hayes it felt like drawing a full breath after years of shallow existence. A month passed, transforming the Hayes mansion in subtle but significant ways. Where silence and tension had reigned, now conversation and occasional laughter echoed through the halls. The twins still had difficult moments, but they no longer seemed intent on driving everyone away. Sarah established routines that brought structure to their chaotic lives. Meals were eaten together at the table, homework was completed before play. Consequences for actions, both positive and negative, were consistent and fair. Most surprisingly, Jackson found himself rearranging his schedule to return home earlier. Tonight he arrived to find all three boys sprawled on the living room floor around a chessboard. "Checkmate," Max announced, moving his queen with a flourish. Noah groaned dramatically while Ethan watched with fascination. "How did you learn to play like that?" "My dad taught me," Max explained, resetting the pieces. "He said chess teaches you to think 5 moves ahead in life." Jackson set down his briefcase, drawing their attention. "Dad," Noah acknowledged, a far cry from the cold reception of weeks past. "Max is teaching us chess. Did you know he's played since he was 5? "Is that so?" Jackson approached, examining the board. "I used to play in college." The boys looked at him with new interest. Jackson Hayes, the perpetually busy executive, had once done something as ordinary as play chess. "Perhaps we could play sometime," he offered, surprising himself. Ethan's eyes widened. "Really?" "Of course," Jackson replied, feeling strangely nervous at his son's scrutiny. "Tomorrow, maybe." Sarah appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Dinner's ready, boys. Please wash up." As the children raced upstairs, Sarah turned to Jackson. "You're home early again." "The Tokyo deal is finalized," he explained, though they both knew that had never stopped him from working late before. Over dinner, Jackson found himself drawn into their conversations about school projects and neighborhood adventures. He watched Sarah deftly manage the boys' energy, setting boundaries while making each feel heard. Later, after the children were in bed, Jackson lingered in his study, staring at childhood photos of the twins he'd recently displayed on his desk. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting Sarah with a household question. Instead, Ethan stood in the doorway in pajamas, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Can't sleep?" Jackson asked. Ethan shook his head, hovering uncertainly. "What is it, son?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Noah says I should just ask you." "Ask me what?" "If you're going to make Sarah and Max leave when we start behaving better." The question hit Jackson like a physical blow. "What? No, Ethan. That's not..." "Because Victoria said she loved us when we were good, but she left anyway," Ethan continued, words tumbling out. "And the other nannies all quit when we were bad. So I don't understand why Sarah stays even when we do pranks." Jackson motioned for Ethan to sit. His son perched on the edge of the chair, tense and expectant. "Sarah stays because she cares about you and Noah," Jackson explained carefully. "Not because she's paid to, or because you're perfect. She cares about who you are, not how you behave." Ethan processed this. "Like a real mom would?" The question pierced Jackson's heart. "Yes, like a real mom." "Dad?" Ethan looked directly at him, his young face serious. Why didn't you ever teach us about Mom, our real mom? Jackson swallowed hard. For years he'd protected himself from his own grief by avoiding the subject, not realizing his silence had created a void. I thought it would be too painful, he admitted. But I was wrong. Sarah helped me see that. Ethan nodded solemnly, then shocked Jackson by moving forward to give him a quick, awkward hug before darting back to the door. Good night, Dad. Good night, son. After Ethan left, Jackson remained motionless, the brief embrace lingering like a ghost. Through his office window, he caught sight of Sarah in the garden, collecting herbs by moonlight. In just 1 month, this woman had begun healing wounds he'd allowed to fester for years. The realization was both comforting and terrifying. An ordinary Tuesday afternoon turned extraordinary with one phone call. Sarah was helping Noah with a science project when her cell phone rang, displaying a number she instantly recognized. Principal Whitaker? Yes, this is Sarah Mitchell. As she listened, her expression shifted from surprise to excitement. The boys watched curiously as she ended the call with a breathless, "Thank you so much." What was that about? Max asked, sensing his mother's sudden elation. Sarah sat down, trying to contain her smile. Remember Westside Elementary, where I interviewed last spring? They finally have a teaching position open. Full benefits, summer program option, everything we've been hoping for. Max's eyes lit up. You got the job? They want me to interview again next week, but Principal Whitaker said it's practically mine. She squeezed Max's hand. We could have our own place again, honey. The twins exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Noah's fingers tightened around his pencil until his knuckles whitened. But you just got here, he said quietly. Sarah's celebration faltered as she registered the hurt in Noah's voice. It's just an interview, she assured him. Nothing's decided yet. But the damage was done. The specter of abandonment, never far from the twins' consciousness, had been summoned once more. That evening, when Jackson returned home, he sensed the shift immediately. Instead of the usual greeting, the house felt eerily reminiscent of the tense atmosphere from his pre-Sarah days. He found her in the kitchen preparing dinner alone. Where are the boys? He asked. Upstairs. They've been quiet since this afternoon. Sarah nervously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I got a call about a teaching position. Understanding dawned on Jackson's face. Ah. It's just an interview, she clarified quickly. Jackson nodded, ignoring the unexpected tightness in his chest. Of course. You should pursue it. The thing is, Sarah hesitated. Ethan and Noah didn't take it well. They've grown attached to you, Jackson stated matter-of-factly, though his expression betrayed more complex emotions. To both of you. The unspoken question hung between them. And have you grown attached to them? Before Sarah could respond, a crash from upstairs shattered the moment. They rushed to find water cascading down the hallway from the overflowing bathroom sink. Ethan stood in the doorway, defiance masking fear on his face. Oops, he said flatly. It was the first destructive prank in weeks, a deliberate regression to old patterns. Jackson opened his mouth, anger flashing in his eyes. But Sarah touched his arm lightly. I've got this, she said quietly. She approached Ethan with calm determination. Help me clean this up, please. Why? You're just going to leave anyway. His voice cracked slightly. Sarah knelt to meet his eyes. Ethan Hayes, I am not Victoria. Whether I take another job or not, I would never disappear from your life. The boy's lower lip trembled. Everyone says that. I don't make promises I can't keep, Sarah replied firmly. Even if I worked elsewhere, we could visit, have dinner, together sometimes, keep teaching you chess. Jackson watched the exchange, struck by how easily Sarah navigated his son's emotions while he himself stood helpless, a stranger in his own home. Later that night, Jackson found Max sitting alone on the patio, turning his repaired Nintendo Switch over in his hands, the very one Jackson had purchased months ago, which he'd secretly fixed and returned to the boy. May I join you? Jackson asked. Max nodded, uncharacteristically somber. Mom really wants that teaching job. She talks about it all the time. Jackson sat beside him. It's what she trained for. I know. Max looked up at him. But I don't want to leave. Ethan and Noah are like the brothers I never had. The simple honesty of the child's admission struck Jackson deeply. These 4 people had formed bonds under his roof while he remained on the periphery, observing but never fully participating. What would make you want to stay? He found himself asking. Max considered the question seriously. If it felt like home, like we belonged here. He paused. Like we were a real family. The words lingered in the night air, a challenge Jackson wasn't sure he was ready to meet. The morning after Ethan's sink incident, Jackson was uncharacteristically late coming downstairs. He'd spent a restless night contemplating Max's words. Like we were a real family. The concept both attracted and terrified him. Sarah had already left to drive the children to school when Jackson discovered Max alone in the game room, visibly upset. Max? Why aren't you at school? Jackson approached cautiously, noting the boy's red-rimmed eyes. Max quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. I told Mom I had a stomachache. Jackson sat down beside him, noticing the Nintendo Switch clutched in Max's hands. The screen was cracked, the case partially separated. What happened? He asked gently. Max swallowed hard. Ethan got mad this morning. He said if we're leaving anyway, he doesn't care about being friends anymore. His voice trembled. He grabbed my Switch and threw it. Jackson carefully took the damaged console. May I? Max reluctantly handed it over. Jackson examined it with practiced precision. Technology was, after all, his business. The screen's cracked, but the internal components seem intact. He glanced at Max. I could repair this, you know. Really? Hope flickered in the boy's eyes. I have a workshop downstairs. Would you like to help me? Max nodded eagerly, following Jackson to a room he'd never seen before. Unlike the austere office upstairs, this space was cluttered with circuit boards, tools, and half-finished projects. The playroom of a man who'd built a tech empire. They worked side by side. Jackson found himself oddly comfortable with Max's presence. The boy was naturally curious, asking thoughtful questions about each component. My dad used to fix things too. Max offered quietly as they carefully replaced the cracked screen. Not computers, but cars and stuff. Mom says I have his hands. Jackson nodded, observing Max's deft movements. She's right. You're a natural. After connecting the final wire, Jackson handed the repaired console back to Max. Try it now. Max's face lit up as the screen glowed to life. You fixed it, thank you. We fixed it, Jackson corrected, feeling unexpectedly warmed by the boy's delight. Max grew serious suddenly. Mr. Hayes, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you always look scared when you're with Ethan and Noah? The question landed like a physical blow. Jackson opened his mouth to deny it, then stopped himself. This child deserved honesty. I suppose I am scared, he admitted quietly. Of what? They're just kids. Jackson carefully placed his tools back in their case. Not of them. Of failing them. He paused. When their mother died, I didn't know how to be both parents. Then Victoria came along and I thought she would fill that gap. When she left, I realized I'd been using her presence as an excuse to keep my distance. Because you were afraid of getting hurt again? Max asked with surprising insight. Jackson looked at him sharply. Your mother told you that? Max shook his head. No, but that's why Mom didn't date after my dad died. She told me she was afraid of loving someone who might leave too. The parallel struck Jackson deeply. Your mother is very brave. She says, brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing things even when you are scared. Jackson considered this childlike wisdom. She's right about that too. Max carefully tucked the repaired switch into his pocket. Mr. Hayes, Mom really likes it here. She smiles a lot more than before. Even when she talks about that teaching job, she looks sad too. Before Jackson could process this revelation, his phone chimed with a text message from Sarah. Max okay? Should I come home early? With sudden clarity, Jackson realized what he needed to do. Sarah had been caring for everyone, his sons, her son, even him in subtle ways. Perhaps it was time someone considered what she needed. "Max," he said, making a decision. "How would you feel about helping me with something important?" The boy's eyes lit with interest. "What kind of something?" "A surprise. For your mother." Sarah returned from her teaching interview filled with conflicting emotions. The position was everything she'd hoped for: supportive administration, creative curriculum, even slightly better pay than she'd anticipated. Yet as Principal Whitaker outlined the opportunity, Sarah found herself thinking about the twins' faces at breakfast that morning, solemn and withdrawn as they wished her luck. The mansion was unusually quiet when she entered. "Hello? Boys?" She found Jackson in his study, immersed in paperwork. He glanced up, his expression unreadable. "How was the interview?" "It went well," she admitted, settling into the chair across from him. "They offered me the job on the spot." "Congratulations." His tone was measured, professional. "When would you start?" "After the holidays. 6 weeks from now." Sarah studied him carefully. "I haven't accepted yet." Jackson set down his pen. "Why not? It's what you've wanted." "Things change," she said simply. "People change." A charged silence stretched between them until Jackson finally spoke. "There's something I need to tell you about." He hesitated, then continued. "About Emma. And what happened after." Sarah leaned forward slightly, sensing the weight of his words. "Emma and I met in college," he began, his voice soft but steady. "She was studying literature. I was the tech nerd who couldn't believe someone so vibrant would look twice at me. We built everything together. My first company, our life, our plans for a family." He stood, moving to the window. "The pregnancy was difficult from the start. The doctors warned us, but Emma wouldn't consider alternatives. These boys deserve their chance," she kept saying. His voice cracked slightly. "The night she died, I held our sons while they wheeled her away. I wanted to hate them, Sarah. For a moment I did." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Jackson?" "I buried myself in work, hired nannies to handle what I couldn't face. Then I met Victoria at a charity event. She was beautiful, confident, seemingly wonderful with the boys. I convinced myself it was enough, that companionship and stability were all that mattered." His laugh was bitter. "She left a note, said she'd met someone who made her feel alive. As if that justified abandoning 2 children who already lost their mother." Sarah moved to stand beside him, not touching, but present. "You've carried this alone for too long." Jackson turned to face her. "After you came, I started noticing things. How Ethan's laugh sounds exactly like Emma's. How Noah has her concentration furrow when he reads." He shook his head. "I've spent years trying not to see her in them, and all I did was miss knowing my own sons." "It's not too late," Sarah said gently. "That's what you've shown me." He met her eyes directly. "You've given me back my family, Sarah, and now you're considering leaving." The naked vulnerability in his expression caught her off guard. This wasn't just about convenient childcare, this was something far more profound. "I don't know what to do," she confessed. "The boys need stability. My taking another job, disrupting the routine we've established. What do you need?" Jackson interrupted, surprising her. "Not the boys, not Max, not me. What does Sarah Mitchell need?" The question stunned her into silence. How long had it been since anyone had asked that? "I need purpose," she finally answered. "Security for Max. I need to know I'm more than just convenient help. And if you could have those things without leaving?" His voice was careful, controlled. "Would you consider staying?" Hope and fear mingled in her chest. "What are you asking me, Jackson?" Before he could answer, the doorbell rang, followed by the sound of the housekeeper admitting someone. A familiar voice echoed from the foyer, cultured, female, and entirely unwelcome. "Where are my darling boys?" "Victoria's home," Jackson froze, his face draining of color. That's impossible. She's in Europe. Sarah's stomach clenched as they moved toward the sound. In the entryway stood a tall, elegant blonde, wearing designer clothes and a calculated smile. She turned. At their approach, her eyes widening fractionally at the sight of Sarah. "Jackie, darling," Victoria purred. "Aren't you going to introduce me to the new help?" Jackson's posture stiffened as he moved slightly in front of Sarah, an unconscious protective gesture. "Victoria, this is unexpected." Victoria's laugh tinkled like expensive crystal. "I wanted to surprise the boys." Her gaze traveled over Sarah, assessing and dismissive. "Though apparently I'm the one surprised, you've changed your usual type of nanny." "Sarah Mitchell is the boy's caregiver," Jackson replied, his voice cool and formal. "Why are you here, Victoria? Our divorce was finalized over a year ago." Victoria's perfect smile dimmed slightly. "Can't a mother visit her children? Where are Ethan and Noah?" "At their piano lesson," Sarah interjected smoothly, earning a sharp glance from Victoria. "They won't be back for another hour." "How convenient." Victoria set her designer handbag on a console table, making herself at home. "Then we adults can chat. I've been doing some thinking during my time away, Jackie. About priorities, family." Her gaze fixed on Jackson meaningfully. "Second chances." Sarah took a small step back. "I should check on dinner." "Please stay, Ms. Mitchell," Jackson said quietly, his eyes never leaving Victoria. "There's nothing Victoria needs to say that you can't hear." Victoria's expression hardened briefly, before softening into practiced remorse. "I've made mistakes, Jackson. Terrible ones. But I've changed. I miss the boys terribly." "You've missed them for 2 years without a single phone call," Jackson pointed out. "I was ashamed," Victoria countered, her eyes welling with perfectly timed tears. "I needed to work on myself before facing them again. Surely you can understand that for the boys' sake." The front door burst open before Jackson could respond, and the twins tumbled in with Max behind them, all three flushed from outdoor play rather than any piano lesson. "Mom, Ethan beat his record on—" Max stopped abruptly, sensing the tension. The twins froze at the sight of Victoria, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock. "My darlings," Victoria exclaimed, arms outstretched. "Look how you've grown." Ethan took an instinctive step backward, bumping into Noah. Neither boy moved toward their former stepmother. Victoria's smile faltered. "Aren't you going to give me a hug? Why are you here?" Ethan demanded, his voice uncharacteristically small. "To see you, of course," Victoria cooed. "I've missed you so much." Noah looked at Sarah, his eyes wide with uncertainty. She gave him a reassuring nod, though her own heart raced with concern. "Boys," Jackson intervened. "Why don't you go upstairs for a bit while we talk to Victoria?" "I want to stay with Sarah," Noah said quietly but firmly. Victoria's expression cooled. "Who's this other child? Don't tell me you've replaced our family already, Jackson?" "This is my son, Max," Sarah explained, moving to stand beside him. "Max, this is Mrs. Hayes. Ex-Mrs. Hayes," Jackson corrected sharply. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "I see. How domestic." She crouched to Noah's level. "Sweetheart, I know I've been gone a while, but we have so much catching up to do. I brought presents from Paris. They're in my car." Noah looked at his feet. Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of his brother. "We don't want presents," he stated. "Ethan," Victoria's shocked tone held a note of warning. "That's very rude. I'm still your mother." "No, you're not," Ethan shot back, his voice rising. "You left. You didn't even say goodbye." Victoria straightened, her facade cracking. "I think the children have been allowed to become quite disrespectful in my absence. The boys have been through a lot," Sarah said carefully. "Perhaps this isn't the best time for—" "I don't believe I asked for child-rearing advice from the hired help," Victoria cut in icily. Jackson's patience visibly snapped. "That's enough, Victoria. Sarah is far more than hired help to this family." Something dangerous flickered in Victoria's eyes as she looked between them. "I see. Well, isn't that interesting?" She collected her handbag with deliberate calm. I'll come back tomorrow when the children are less overwhelmed. We have a lot to discuss, Jackson, about our family's future. As the door closed behind her, Noah turned to Sarah, fear plain on his face. Is she going to take us away? Sarah knelt to his level, aware of Jackson watching them both. No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go, I promise. But as she met Jackson's troubled eyes over the children's heads, she wondered if that was a promise either of them could keep. The night after Victoria's unexpected appearance, the Hayes mansion felt like a fortress under siege. Jackson spent hours on the phone with his attorney, while Sarah tried to maintain normalcy for the children's sake. The twins, usually eager for bedtime stories, were subdued and clingy. You don't have to worry, Sarah reassured them, tucking Noah's blanket around his shoulders. Your dad won't let anything bad happen. But Victoria always gets what she wants, Noah whispered, his eyes wide with fear. She said Dad couldn't say no to her. Sarah smoothed his hair. People change, Noah. Your dad is stronger than he was before. Ethan, sitting cross-legged on his own bed, scowled. Why did she come back now? We were fine without her. I don't know, Sarah admitted. But whatever happens, you two are strong enough to handle it. And you're not alone this time. After the boys finally drifted to sleep, Sarah found Jackson in his study, staring at legal documents spread across his desk. What did your lawyer say? She asked quietly. Jackson rubbed his eyes. Victoria has no legal claim on the boys. The divorce agreement was clear. She relinquished all parental rights in exchange for a substantial settlement. That's good news, isn't it? It should be. His expression remained troubled. But Victoria doesn't give up easily when she wants something, and she's clever about getting her way. Sarah leaned against the doorframe. What do you think she really wants? Money, most likely. Her new relationship probably didn't work out as planned. He sighed heavily. She knows my weakness. I'd pay anything to protect the boys from more pain. The boys are stronger than you think, Sarah said gently. They've been healing. Jackson met her eyes. Because of you. He hesitated, then added, We never finished our conversation from earlier about you staying. Sarah's heart quickened. No, we didn't. Before he could continue, his phone buzzed. Jackson glanced at the screen and frowned. Victoria, again. He declined the call. Whatever she's planning, I need to end this quickly. The following morning, Sarah took Max and the twins to the neighborhood park, hoping fresh air might ease their anxiety. She watched from a bench as they kicked a soccer ball across the field, relieved to see them momentarily carefree. They seem fond of you. Sarah turned to find Victoria standing beside her, elegant in a tailored pantsuit despite the casual setting. Mrs. Hayes? Sarah acknowledged cautiously. The boys didn't mention you were joining us. Ex-Mrs. Hayes, Victoria corrected with a tight smile, echoing Jackson's words from yesterday. And they didn't know. I thought we should talk, woman to woman. Sarah remained silent, waiting. Victoria sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. You've done well with them. Better than I expected, honestly. They're wonderful children. Yes, they are. Victoria watched the boys play. Noah's grown so tall. Ethan's still the leader, I see. For a moment, genuine affection seemed to soften Victoria's features. Then her expression hardened. Let's be direct, shall we? Jackson clearly values you. The children are attached. It's all very touching. Her voice took on a steely edge. But this little family tableau you've created, it's temporary. I'm back now, and I intend to reconnect with my sons. They're not your sons, Sarah replied, evenly. You gave up that right. Victoria's laugh was brittle. Paperwork can be amended. Hearts can change. She leaned closer. You should consider the teaching position. Make a clean break. It would be less painful for everyone. Sarah met her gaze steadily. Is that a threat? A word of advice. I know things about Jackson, about what happened with Emma. Things that would break those boys if they ever found out. Sarah's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Victoria smiled and stood. Ask Jackson about the night Emma died, about his reaction to the twins. She gestured toward the playing field. Noah! Ethan! Come give Victoria a hug. Sarah watched in alarm as Noah froze, his young face paling. Victoria approached him with outstretched arms, speaking too quietly for Sarah to hear. The boy shook his head, backing away. What happened next unfolded with frightening speed. Victoria gripped Noah's arm, pulling him toward the parking lot. Max shouted. Ethan ran toward his brother. Sarah sprinted across the field, adrenaline surging. Let him go, Victoria. We're just having a private conversation, Victoria hissed, still dragging Noah, who was now struggling openly. Mom! Noah cried out, not to Victoria but to Sarah. Something fierce and protective erupted in Sarah's chest. She caught up to them at the parking lot's edge, placing herself between Victoria and the trembling boy. This has gone far enough, Sarah stated firmly. Let him go now. Victoria's eyes flashed with dangerous rage. You have no idea who you're dealing with. A car engine revved nearby. In the driver's seat sat a man Sarah didn't recognize, looking anxious. With sudden clarity, Sarah understood. This wasn't just intimidation. It was an attempted abduction. Noah, run to your brother, Sarah ordered, never taking her eyes off Victoria. Now! As Noah broke free, Victoria lunged after him. Sarah blocked her path, grappling briefly with the taller woman. Victoria's manicured nails raked across Sarah's cheek, drawing blood. The squeal of tires announced another arrival. Jackson's, car skidding to a stop nearby. Victoria's accomplice gunned his engine, speeding away as Jackson leapt out, face ashen with fury and fear. Dad! The twins cried in unison, running to him. Victoria stumbled back, her composed facade crumbling completely. This isn't over, she spat, then turned and fled on foot. Jackson gathered his sons close, his gaze finding Sarah, who stood with Max, her cheek bleeding, but her stance unwavering. In that moment, something shifted permanently between them, an unspoken recognition of what truly makes a family. The Hayes mansion buzzed with activity in the days following the park incident. Private security guards patrolled the grounds. Jackson's attorney filed for an emergency restraining order against Victoria. Detective Russell, a stern-faced woman, with kind eyes, took statements from everyone, paying special attention to Noah's account. You were very brave, she told the boy, who sat nestled against Sarah on the living room sofa. Both of you were. Noah looked up at Sarah, his expression solemn. Sarah protected me, like a real mom would. The simple statement hung in the air, powerful in its childlike clarity. That evening, after the children were finally asleep, the twins insisted on sharing a room now. Sarah found Jackson standing on the back terrace, staring into the darkness. Security team says there's been no sign of Victoria, he said as she approached. My attorney thinks she's likely left the state already. The man in the car was apparently someone she met recently. He claims he didn't know what she was planning. Sarah touched her bandaged cheek absently. Do you believe that? I don't know what to believe anymore. Jackson turned to face her, his expression haunted. Victoria said something to you, didn't she? Before. Everything. Sarah hesitated. She mentioned Emma, the night she died. Jackson closed his eyes briefly. Of course she did. He gestured to the patio chairs. Please sit. You deserve the truth. As they settled, Jackson began speaking, his voice low and measured. When the doctors told me Emma was gone, I was destroyed. They placed these two tiny, red-faced babies in my arms, and all I could think was that they were the reason she wasn't there anymore. His hands clenched. I couldn't look at them. For hours, I just couldn't. The nurses had to take them. That's a normal grief response, Jackson, Sarah said gently. Victoria was there when I finally went to the nursery. She was a hospital benefactor doing some publicity tour. His laugh was hollow, She saw me standing there completely lost and helped me hold Noah properly. Showed me how to support his head, it seemed. Providential at the time. She used your vulnerability to insinuate herself into your life, Sarah observed without judgment. Jackson nodded slowly. When we married a year later, I convinced myself it was for the boys, that they needed a mother, but really I was terrified of failing them alone. He met Sarah's eyes directly. What Victoria didn't know, what I never told anyone, was that I went back to that nursery every night after she left. I would apologize to them for my weakness, promise to be better. Sarah reached across the space between them, covering his hand with hers. You were grieving, Jackson. You didn't fail them. I did, though, for years. His fingers intertwined with hers. Until you came. The weight of his words settled around them, intimate and honest. The boys want to talk to you, Sarah said after a moment. About what happened today. About me. Jackson looked up, questioning. Noah called me Mom at the park. He didn't mean to, it just came out. Now he's worried I'll be upset. Are you? Jackson's voice was careful, measured. Sarah's smile was soft. No, but it's a big word with big meaning. I don't want to confuse them more. What about Max? How does he feel about all this? He asked if we could stay forever. Sarah hesitated. I told him that's not how jobs work. And if it wasn't about the job? Jackson's question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Before Sarah could answer, a small voice called from the doorway. Dad? Sarah? They turned to find Ethan in pajamas, sleep-tousled and anxious. What is it, son? Jackson moved toward him immediately. Noah had a nightmare. About Victoria taking him away. Ethan's lower lip trembled slightly. Me too. Without hesitation, Sarah and Jackson followed him upstairs. They found Noah sitting up in bed, tear-streaked and trembling. Max had somehow migrated to the twins' room as well, perched on the edge of Noah's bed. She can't get you, Max was saying earnestly. My mom won't let her. Jackson sat on Ethan's bed, drawing him close, while Sarah settled beside Noah, stroking his hair. Max is right, she affirmed. You're safe here. But she'll come back, Noah whispered. She always does. Not this time, Jackson promised. I won't let her hurt you again. None of us will. As the children calmed, no one suggested returning to separate rooms. Instead, Jackson retrieved extra blankets, and Sarah settled against the headboard with Noah tucked against her side. Ethan curled next to his father, while Max claimed the foot of Noah's bed. In the soft glow of the nightlight, they formed a protective circle. Not the family any of them had originally expected, but exactly the one they all needed. Just before drifting off, Ethan raised his head sleepily. Dad, can we be a real family now? Jackson's eyes met Sarah's across the darkened room, a silent question and answer passing between them. We already are, son, he replied softly. We already are. 3 weeks after the Victoria incident, the Hayes mansion prepared for its first Thanksgiving celebration in years. Delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen, where Sarah orchestrated the meal preparation with cheerful efficiency. The boys darted in and out, snatching samples when they thought she wasn't looking. I saw that, Noah Hayes, Sarah called without turning around as Noah attempted to sneak a deviled egg. Those are for dinner, Noah grinned, unrepentant. Dad says I'm a growing boy who needs protein. Is that so? Sarah raised an eyebrow, trying to suppress her smile. Well, Dad can explain why his perfectly arranged appetizer tray has mysteriously shrunk before the guests arrive. Guests? Ethan appeared in the doorway, alarm crossing his face. What guests? Sarah wiped her hands on her apron. Just Ms. Abernathy from next door, and my friend Claire from my old apartment building with her daughter Lily. Small, I promise. Ethan's shoulders relaxed. Since Victoria's attempted abduction, the twins had become wary of strangers, a natural response their therapist assured Jackson would ease with time. Healing was happening, but at its own pace. "Can I help with anything?" Max asked, already setting out napkins without being asked. "Actually," Sarah replied, "could you boys take these serving dishes to the dining room? She stopped herself, flushing slightly. "Jackson is finishing setting the table." The slip didn't go unnoticed. The twins exchanged meaningful glances before gathering the dishes. Since the night they'd all slept in the twins' room, the lines between employer, employee, and family had blurred further, though neither Sarah nor Jackson had explicitly defined their relationship. In the dining room, Jackson stood back to assess his handiwork. The table had been extended to its full length, elegant place settings arranged with surprising attention to detail. "I didn't know you knew how to set a table," Sarah teased, entering with a tray of roasted vegetables. "YouTube tutorial," he admitted, with a self-deprecating smile. "I wanted to get it right." Their eyes met, the moment stretching between them. So many of their conversations these days seemed to carry double meanings. The doorbell interrupted the moment. Max raced to answer it, returning with Miss Abernathy, their elderly neighbor, followed by Sarah's friend Claire and her daughter. Dinner unfolded with surprising ease, conversation flowing, laughter punctuating the meal, even Ethan emerging from his protective shell to engage with Lily, who shared his interest in astronomy. It was, Sarah realized halfway through, the first holiday meal she and Max had shared with others since losing David. As dessert concluded, Jackson tapped his glass gently. "Before everyone disperses, I'd like to say something." He stood, uncharacteristically, nervous. "When I was a child, holidays were formal affairs in my house, more obligation than celebration. Later, after losing Emma, they became something to endure rather than enjoy." He glanced around the table. "Today reminded me what a family holiday should feel like, so thank you, all of you, for being here." Claire caught Sarah's eye with a raised eyebrow, silently communicating her approval of this man who seemed nothing like the cold billionaire CEO the media portrayed. As the evening wound down and guests departed, the boys retired to the media room for a holiday movie, leaving Sarah and Jackson alone in the kitchen. "That was lovely," Sarah said, loading the dishwasher. "The boys seemed happy." "They are happy," Jackson confirmed, rolling up his sleeves to help with cleanup. "We all are." He paused, then added quietly, "Thanks to you." Sarah shook her head. "Not just me. You've changed too, Jackson. The way you are with them now. It's beautiful to see. I've had an excellent teacher." He handed her another plate, their fingers brushing momentarily. "Sarah, about the teaching position." Her hand stilled. "I called Principal Whitaker yesterday. I declined the offer." Jackson's expression shifted to surprise. "You did? But you've been working toward that for so long. Some goals change when life changes." She closed the dishwasher, turning to face him fully. "The truth is, I couldn't imagine leaving the boys. Or other things here." Jackson took a step closer. "What other things?" Sarah's heart raced. "You know what things, Jackson." They stood in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Jackson reached out slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been afraid," he admitted quietly, "of feeling too much, of losing someone again." "I know," Sarah whispered. "Me too. But I'm more afraid of missing this chance." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "These past months with you and Max here, it's like the house finally became a home. The boys are thriving. I'm living again, not just existing." Sarah smiled, her eyes bright with emotion. "We feel the same way." "Then stay," Jackson said, simply. "Not as an employee, as family, all of you." "Are you offering us a permanent home, Mr. Hayes?" Sarah asked, her tone light but her eyes serious. Jackson shook his head, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm offering much more than that if you'll have it. If you'll have me." Sarah's breath caught. "Jackson." The sound of rapid footsteps interrupted them as all three boys burst into the kitchen. "Mom, Max exclaimed, then froze, suddenly uncertain. I mean, Sarah, it's okay, she assured him quickly. You can call me whatever feels right. Max exchanged glances with the twins, an unspoken communication passing between them. We've been talking, Ethan announced, hands on his hips in a posture remarkably like his father's. And we have something important to ask. Noah stepped forward, his expression earnest. Are you and Max going to live with us forever, like really forever? Sarah looked at Jackson, who nodded encouragingly. Actually, she said, your father and I were just discussing that. And? Ethan prompted impatiently. Jackson placed his arm around Sarah's shoulders, the gesture feeling simultaneously new and completely natural. If it's all right with all of you, we thought we might try being a real family. Officially. The boys stared at them, processing the implications. Then Max broke into a wide grin. Does that mean I can call you Dad now? He asked Jackson directly. Jackson knelt to eye level with the boy who had somehow claimed a piece of his heart. I would be honored, Max, and I promise to be the best dad I can be, to all of you. The twins' expressions transformed from cautious hope to unrestrained joy. Noah flung himself forward, wrapping his arms around both Sarah and his father. So we're really a family now? He confirmed, his voice muffled against Sarah's sweater. We are, Sarah affirmed, her eyes meeting Jackson's over the children's heads. In his gaze, she saw everything they hadn't yet said aloud: love, promise, commitment, and knew with absolute certainty that they had all found their way home. Spring bloomed across the Hayes estate, transforming the garden into a riot of colors. Inside, an equally significant transformation was underway, as the family prepared for Mother's Day, a holiday that once brought only painful memories to the household. Sarah found Noah sitting alone on the window seat, clutching construction, paper and markers, his expression troubled. Everything okay, sweetheart? She asked, settling beside him. The Mother's Day celebration at school, he explained. Everyone's making cards, but... He hesitated. I don't know who to make mine for. Sarah's heart ached. What's troubling you about it? I never knew my real mom, and Victoria wasn't. His voice trailed off. And now there's you, he continued softly. But is it okay to make one for you when I already have a mom in heaven? Sarah took his small hand in hers. Love isn't limited, Noah. Your birth mother gave you life, the greatest gift possible. You can honor her memory and still have room in your heart for me too. Really? Hope brightened his eyes. Really? Sarah assured him. Family isn't about replacing people. It's about creating space for everyone who matters. Later that afternoon, as Sarah helped Max with homework, Ethan approached with a handmade card. It's for both of you, he explained. My first mom and you, is that okay? Sarah embraced him, blinking back tears. It's perfect. At the school celebration, when his teacher commented on their complicated family situation, Noah smiled confidently. It's not complicated, he replied. I have a mom in heaven who gave me life, and a mom on earth who teaches me how to live. The Hayes garden had never looked more beautiful. White chairs lined a flower-adorned aisle, and an elegant arch of roses stood at its end. The mid-June sun cast a golden glow over the intimate gathering of friends who had come to witness something once thought impossible: a second chance at love and family. Jackson stood beneath the arch, more nervous than before any business presentation of his career. Beside him, 3 young boys fidgeted in matching suits, occasionally whispering among themselves. Stop moving, Ethan instructed his brother. You'll mess up your tie. It's already messed up, Noah complained, tugging at the fabric. Max grinned, reaching over to straighten it. Dad says Mom won't care if we look perfect. She just wants us all here. The word Mom now flowed easily from Max's lips when referring to Sarah, just as Dad had become natural when addressing Jackson. The adoption papers for both Max and the twins had been finalized last month, legal confirmation of what their hearts already knew. The string quartet began playing, and all heads turned toward the house. Sarah appeared in the doorway, radiant, in a simple ivory gown. Claire's daughter Lily preceded her, scattering rose petals along the path. As Sarah walked toward them, Jackson felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had never expected to love again after Emma, had fortified himself against it, believing lightning couldn't strike twice. Yet here she was, this extraordinary, ordinary woman who had healed his broken family with nothing more than patience, courage, and boundless love. When she reached him, Jackson took her hands in his. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "So are you," she replied, her eyes moving lovingly from him to the boys who stood proudly at his side. The ceremony was brief but deeply meaningful. When the time came for vows, Jackson spoke from his heart. "Sarah, you found us when we were lost, not just the boys but me too. You showed me that protecting my heart meant missing its purpose." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I promise to love you and Max with the same devotion you've shown us. To remember that family isn't something we're given, but something we build together. Every day." Sarah squeezed his hands, tears glistening in her eyes as she responded. "Jackson, I came to your door seeking security but found a home instead. You and the boys have taught me that love isn't safer when it's smaller. It's stronger when it's shared." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to walk beside you through whatever comes, to help our boys grow into men who know how to love, courageously, and to never take for granted the miracle of finding each other when we needed it most." After the ceremony, as guests mingled and the children played on the lawn, Jackson led Sarah to a small table near the house. On it sat a glass display case inside which rested Max's Nintendo Switch, the unlikely catalyst that had brought them together. "I had it restored," Jackson explained. "Not to play with, but to remember." Sarah touched the case gently. "Our beginning." "One of many beginnings," Jackson corrected, drawing her close. "And no endings." From across the garden they watched as their sons, because that's what they were now, all three of them without distinction or qualification, raced and laughed together, whole and healing and free. "They'll be okay, won't they?" Sarah murmured. Jackson nodded, his arms secure around her waist. "Better than okay. They have what they need most." "What's that?" His eyes met hers, no longer guarded or afraid. "The certainty that they're loved, that this family, our family, is forever." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn, the Hayes family gathered for photographs beneath the rose arch. Not the family any of them had first imagined, but exactly the one they all needed, bound not by circumstance or obligation, but by the daily choice to love each other through whatever came, and in this choice, they had found their greatest strength and deepest joy.